Good morning and welcome. My name is Anna Blanco, and I'm the Executive Director of the International Ocean Film Festival. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's Q&A about Cordell Bank, the National Treasure. I am so excited to have everyone here on this particular call. And even more excited because we are so happy to have a film about one of our local treasures here in the Bay Area, which is Cordell Bank. The film festival has a long relationship with the Sanctuaries program, as well as Greater Farallones National Marine Sanctuaries and Cordell Bank National Marine Sanctuaries. So when this film came along to the film festival, I was super excited because I realized how few people know about Cordell Bank. And so this is a way to tell people that there's this amazing place here in the Bay Area that everyone should know about for a number of reasons, which our experts today are going to give us more information about. Before we get started, I would like to just share with everyone that this broadcast is being recorded, and it'll be available immediately following on our website and on the Eventive website. We will also be showing films through August 16th. Hopefully everyone saw our notice yesterday that we've extended the festival by another 7 days. We just found that so many people really wanted more time to watch the films. There's a lot of great films to watch, and all the Q&As are interesting, and they're all available as well. So people wanted more time to be able to watch those as well. So we're super excited to be doing it virtually. We never thought we would be here after all this time, but it's nice to visit with people around the world virtually. It's nice to be able to share the films. It's really nice to be able to share the time and the conversation with the filmmakers who, in many cases, when you're doing an in-person event, you don't always have an opportunity to meet the filmmakers. So this is a new platform, and it's been very fun. It's been very successful for us. So in the future, hopefully we get a chance to do both an in-person as well as a virtual film festival. But for now, thanks for making it happen, and thanks for joining us. And thank you to this wonderful panel. So I am going to get started, and I'm going to introduce Robert Rubin, Dr. Robert Rubin. Bob, as we know him, is a marine biologist, and he's the director of the Pacific Manta Research Group. He's also super qualified to be our moderator for today because he was instrumental in helping to make this film possible. He's also on the board of the Cordell Bank National Marine Sanctuaries Foundation. So without further ado, welcome, Bob, and thank you so much. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Anna. Good morning, friends and neighbors from every place. It's sunny in California, and it's really a pleasure to have you here. We are today charged with talking about one of the most magic and spectacular natural places on the planet. I've been amazed by it as a biologist and also just as a curious participant in this film. And I've made good friends of the three panelists that are here in a relatively short period of time. We worked together on the film, and we're by and large pleased with it. We use it in lots of formats, and we're using it in an educational format with different people in different settings. So it's really a pleasure to have you here, and we look forward to an hour of good discussion about a magic place along the coast of Northern California. I would like to introduce my colleagues this morning, and on my left at the bottom of the screen is Jennifer Stock, who we generally think of as Jenny. We have all these pet names for our pals, but nonetheless, they have formal names as well that their parents gave them, and so we'll use those from time to time. Jennifer has been involved with the Marine Sanctuary for a very long time, but she now serves in the education area of the Sanctuary's outreach programs, and she is the coordinator for NOAA's Cordell Bank National Marine Sanctuary. NOAA, of course, is an acronym for National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, and as in all agencies like this, we chop them into small little acronyms that we can use quickly like people's pet names as well. But the sanctuary is a wonderful place, and Jen has been involved in it for a long period of time. I think going on 20 years now. She looks like she's still 14, but must have started a little earlier or later than I realized. But nonetheless, she's had a long period in her life of outdoor education. It seems to be a big part of her interest from a very early age. And she has done a number of different things, both before coming to the sanctuary and also as a sanctuary colleague and employee. But her claim to fame includes kayaking, guiding, and being an interpreter in the national park system. It also includes lots and lots of programs that have appeared on television, sound bites, but long time programs as well. And a great number of community outreach efforts, including the one that I really, really appreciate and like. And that, of course, is her outreach to developmental professionally for teachers, which has passed on then to young students. And I firmly believe that the future of the earth lies in the hands of the children. In addition, Jen's longest program, really about going on 14 years now, is a radio program that is transmitted throughout the Northern California region, but particularly in West Marine, which is termed Coastal Currents, and that also is listened to by a large audience, and also can be sound produced in schools and in classrooms, and that happens to be a pet transfer of that kind of information for me. So, Jen, one heck of a good job for all this period of time. It's nice to see you, and thanks for being here. I look forward to your comments. Next to Jenny is another colleague of hers, and this is Danielle Lipski, who we generally refer to as Danny, or Wonder Woman, as occasionally she is called by colleagues and friends. And she is the wonderful and perfect counterpart of Jen's, because she works on the scientific aspects and the research aspects of what the sanctuary is all about. She's responsible for data handling and data analysis. She spends a good time in the field. We haven't had a lot of good times in the field because of the constraints of the virus and so on, but she manages the scientific program, and all of the data that is collected from research scientists is passed into the appropriate channels where we can all use it, and also to Jen or Jenny, and becomes part of the educational program. So she has a two-edged prong here for both managing and helping us in the larger sector. In addition to Danny's work in those arenas, she has also been involved with the sanctuary for a long period of time, as has Jennifer, and has produced a large amount of data that has appeared in different publications and also will appear to some degree in this presentation. And one of the things that I think she will emphasize to you is that the sanctuary is a large area. It's not just the Cordell Bank, but the Cordell Bank is one of the jewels in the sanctuary system, of which there are 15 sanctuaries nationally. And so this is one of many, but it includes a much larger area of management and conservation than just the area of the bank itself. So Danny, it's really great to have you here with your pal and with your newfound friends. And we really appreciate the time you've taken to put this whole thing together. Not only helped with the film, but also the more than decades of work that you've put in to allow us to have something to say besides listening to me.
Very happy to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you here. And then at the top of the screen is a newfound friend of about 5 years now, and this is Elliott. She is the series producer of the film that you will see here and many more for the organization that we call Changing Seas. She has produced a large number of episodes, very much like the one that that you will see if you look at this film. And I've used several of them in teaching in college and university classes because of their really superb content about the natural world and animals, and how they fit ecologically, conservationally, and also ecologically. So, Alexa, as always, it's wonderful to see you, and it's really a pleasure to have you here. I can't believe that, knowing the schedules that I know for you guys, that all three of you, I guess all four of us, are together at one time to at least chat just for a short period. We seem so busy, like everybody else, that it's really an honor to be part of this, and I'm happy to be here myself. We have a number of questions that have been prepared that I think relate nicely to the film, and I'd like to direct them to each of you. Perhaps you can also interact one with the other. There's no reason that we have to go by calling names. If you feel that you fit and the ideas that you'd like to share are conversant with whatever else is being said, put them in there. That's part of what we call a conversation, and we're happy to have those with bright, shiny faces and people of goodwill and good mind. So let me begin, and I will begin, if you don't mind, Alexa, please, with you. And I just like to ask you, as a producer of these episodes for Changing Seas, you've produced a large number of these, and I know them. I've looked at the vast majority of them, and as I said, I've used them. But I'd like to ask you, how did you get involved in this thing? Most of what you've done is in really warm water for the not so brave, if you will. Very few people dive in the crazy part of Northern California, and it's cold and it's green and so on, unlike Florida and the Caribbean. So how did you come to work on the coast of California, from all these beautiful places in the tropics where you can dive in a bathing suit and be warm, actually?
Well, first, thank you so much for the nice introductions, Bob. Like you said, we met several years ago, and kind of the way all this came about. So I work for South Florida PBS, which is located in Miami, and that's where the Changing Seas series is produced out of. So most of our filming usually does take place in somewhat warmer temperatures. But I guess, Bob, it was about, 5 years ago now that we met in the Revillagigedo archipelago, where we were actually doing an episode on Bob's work, because Bob, if you don't know, is actually a world-renowned Manta scientist, and we were very fortunate to be able to be out in the Socorro Islands with Bob, filming some of his research. And while we were on the liveaboard with him, Bob kept wearing this particular hat. And finally I asked him about it, and Bob said, well, I have to tell you all about the Cordell Bank in California, close to where I live. You guys really should think about coming out there and doing an episode on, this just incredible and amazing ecosystem. So I remember Bob really told us quite a bit on the trip about the Cordell Bank. And after we were done with the Manta program, we got back in touch, and I said, Bob, well, how could we make this happen? We have being public television, we have a somewhat limited budget. And thank you, Bob. I mean, you really pulled out all the stops. Without Bob, this wouldn't have happened. He did so much behind the scenes to put us in touch with the right people. He even put us in touch with his own friend, one of his own friends, Diane, who kindly hosted us at her house. I mean, it was just an incredible effort that happened behind the scenes. You pulled out all the stops and made sure that we were able to come from Florida to California and then get to work with Jenny and Danny and some of their other colleagues. And that's kind of how this all came about. And I guess this program now aired a year and a half ago. We filmed this 2 years ago next month. So, and it was fantastic. I absolutely loved coming to California. Our entire crew just loved the scenery, but we weren't quite qualified to dive in those waters. We don't have the equipment, and we really don't have the the skill set to dive in places like the Cordell Bank, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. You really have to be an expert tech diver. It's not one of those try this at home kind of thing. So we were very fortunate, actually, that both Jenny and then the Bowie group, the Bay Area Underwater Explorers, were kind enough to donate all the the beautiful underwater footage that's part of this program, because without it, like, we wouldn't have been able to tell the story.
Well, that certainly is true, and the underwater footage is spectacular. It's hard to believe that in the murky waters of California, so to speak, that exists, that beauty exists. And interesting enough, as our colleagues will describe, the visibility is surprisingly well defined at that depth in what is otherwise a kind of a cloudy sea for us. Now, Danny, if I may direct this next question to you, please. I think a good place to start is a little bit with some of the research that's being done at Cordell Bank. We can talk about the location and things like that, which show nicely in the film. But the research program, I think, is really important, and access, particularly the access program, which to our viewers sounds like access to the ocean, but it's an acronym, of course, for a larger effort. And maybe since you direct that and are in charge of that, we can start there and we can move back and forth between what we're learning and the beauty and spectacular ecology of the bank.
Sure, I'd be happy to talk a little bit about access. I applied California Current Ecosystem Studies project, and Alexa and her team came out with us on the boat and filmed all the footage that you saw on the film about that. And I thought Alexa and her team did such a great job about putting the story together and talking all about why we do that and how we put the different components together. And Access is a collaboration between Cordell Bank and Greater Farallones National Marine Sanctuary and Point Blue Conservation Science. So it's a unique private-public partnership. And because of the teamwork and the collaboration there, we're able to get in so much expertise and get a lot of that work done. And one of the reasons that this program is so important to us is because our science program is really focused on collecting scientific information to drive better decision-making about conservation and management of the sanctuary. And Access has been really instrumental in providing some of that important work. And you saw in the film, or you will see in the film, how we do these structured transect lines, and we do them 3 times a year, and we do this very methodical sampling. And not only do we do that throughout the year, but we do it year over year over year, so that we have 16 years of data. This would have been our 17th year collecting data. And those long data sets become so valuable to management because we're able to see the natural variability through time. And so it allows us to understand the patterns in nature, and also to be able to understand when we're seeing something really different. Is this just within the natural variability we see, or are we seeing something that's new? And so those kinds of patterns become really valuable for us to understand the distribution and trends of the animals in the ecosystem. And we can use it for things like management to inform decisions about our programs to reduce ship strikes to whales, for example, or to reduce risks to whales from entanglement in fishing gear. It allows us to see those hot spots in the ecosystem of where the animals are using the habitat and how that might intersect with human activity.
Yes, and I personally feel that's one of the most important aspects of your work, particularly because the foundation is so foundation and the bank, of course, are so close to big commercial areas like San Francisco, big ships, and so on and so forth. And unfortunately, or fortunately, as the case may be, those happen to be part of the critical habitats, migratory pathways of the great whales. And so that work is invaluable. And Jen, may I ask you, please, to respond a little bit to what Danny said. How do you take the information that she and her colleagues gather and put it into an educational framework that is an outreach framework? Is that a simple task, or is that task? I would guess not, but I see that you have done it so wonderfully well over the years. And explain to me and our audience, of course, just a little bit about how that translates into protecting the bank and the sanctuary, and also how you work in the public sector.
Thank you, Bob. A few things. Well, first, for those that may not have watched the film yet, Cordell Bank National Marine Sanctuary is about 50 miles northwest of San Francisco and is entirely offshore. So the furthest boundary to the east is about 6 miles offshore. So we, as a National Marine Sanctuary, are entirely offshore waters that most people do not visit. A very small percentage of people visit this area because it's offshore and people can go to the beach, or if they want to go fishing, they can fish closer to shore. So it's one of these unique places that is really special because of its biological diversity and abundance and relatively few people visiting it. So that's one of the things that make it so special. To interpret the work that Dani does with her colleagues and collaborators, all the science that are monitoring the waters and learning how it's changing and how it's thriving and learning what's there, that's my great challenge that has kept me at the sanctuary so long, because I want to continually reach more people to bring this place to people near shore in our coastal communities, but far abroad as well. We're part of a national system that are interlocked as federal marine protected areas. So our hope is to reach as many people as possible. So some of the ways I've done that, you mentioned at the beginning, and it's a kind of a wide variety of ways to do it. And some of the things that we've done really well over the years is collaborating with different institutions that have visitors that come to learn by working and creating exhibits. And so we have some really nice exhibits at the Oakland Museum of California in the East Bay, wonderful institution that focuses on natural sciences, art, and history. And we have a really beautiful gallery there all about the Cordell Bank National Marine Sanctuary. And sadly, they're all affected as well by the COVID situation and are closed right now, but we have this great exhibit there, and hopefully again it will be open. And another area is out at the Point Reyes Lighthouse with the Point Reyes National Seashore. We were able to create this really neat ocean exploration center that shows people, when they come out to the lighthouse and look out at the ocean, what lives under the ocean, because our national marine sanctuaries are right offshore there. So we have some murals and models and different panels where people can see the types of habitats that we have offshore there that are places that we've learned about through the work that Dani has done, remotely operated vehicle surveys, to visually see what lives under the water. Other ways are some digital formats with creating stories to share with wide audiences on social media. I host a monthly radio program on KWMR called Ocean Currents, and I share a lot of work there. We did a really fun live show from the exploration vessel Nautilus last year, where Dani and I were on the ship where we were doing some exploration surveys in the deeper parts of Cordell Bank, and did a live radio show to the radio station. And that was kind of a fun way to do it, right?
It's a great way to do it.
So it's a bunch of different things, and definitely collaborating with like South Florida PBS and other film companies that want to highlight these unique places. So that's my mission, is to try to bring the unseen to people to appreciate the role of a healthy ocean in our lives.
Yeah.
And
Well,
you really went above and beyond helping us. I'd just like to say thank you, because I know I pestered you with question after question. Do you have a visual of this or that as we were getting ready for edit? So thank you very much for that.
Well, thank you for putting it into good use. It looks wonderful.
yes, and it's a natural zoo without the cages. And so that's the beauty of being able to do that kind of work. And the animals are free, of course, and you see them in their habitat, natural habitat, which is, of course, what we'd always like to appreciate as well. Dani, Jenny mentioned ROVs. What the heck is an ROV? What does that mean?
Yeah, so an ROV is a remotely operated vehicle that we use to explore the deep parts of the ocean. So in the film, you'll see that they highlight some of the work that the divers have done out there. And it's a really difficult place to go diving, and you have to have a lot of expertise and qualifications, experience to be able to do that. So it's not easy to do, and we need to be able to be out there studying the sanctuary regularly. So we use these remotely operated vehicles, which are like a robot that is tethered by a line to the ship. We can then drive this vehicle underwater to look at the bottom of the seafloor. We call that benthic habitat, but we can just call it seafloor habitat as well. And the ROV is typically outfitted with cameras, video cameras, and still can take still photos as well. There's a whole range of ROVs out there. They can be very simple to operate, and they can get really big and really complex. And we've used a variety of them in different parts of the sanctuary. So there is some ROV footage that you'll see in the film. Some of the really deeper parts of the sanctuary we can only access by ROV. So the sanctuary goes to, the shallowest part of the sanctuary is 115 feet, and then the deeper parts are below 3,000 meters, and I don't know if anybody can quickly convert that for me, but it's a couple miles below the surface of the ocean. So that's really the only way that we can access that. And so we take visual images, and we'll run kind of like what you saw in the film with the access. The ship goes across the surface of the ocean in a line taking samples. We will run the ROV on the bottom of the ocean on the seafloor and kind of go along in a line and take samples and images. And some of the fancier ROVs that we use can have a lot more capabilities so that we can also take measurements of physical characteristics of the ocean. So the temperature and the salinity, the oxygen content of the ocean where the ROV is, as well as collect samples. So there's a little robotic arm that the ROV pilot can manipulate to collect specimens for us of biological specimens, or also if we're interested in the types of rocks or the sediment that's down there as well as taking water samples. And you'll see some of that in the film when Karina is talking about some of her work that she's done on corals. She has been on some of the cruises with us where we've collected corals for her using the ROV.
Well, Jennifer, let me tie that into a question to you. I know we have some new information on deep water corals. And biologists say that there are maybe 30,000 species of fish that are identified, and another 30,000 that have not been. And there are lots of fish, and most of the fish now that haven't been identified, although not all, are in deeper water. And so recently, through the work that you guys have funded, we found some information about deep water corals that we didn't know. And I guess some of that, or if not all of it, came from ROV exploration. So could you highlight that for us just a little bit?
Is that a question for Jenny?
Well, either way, and you guys can bang that back and forth. Danny brought it up.
I'll start, and Danny can fill in a little bit.
Okay, well.
Yeah. So,
okay.
The history of exploration in our sanctuary goes back to the 80s, or actually early, somewhat 70s, that were the first time they actually saw some of the habitat. So back in the 70s, before it was a sanctuary, Bob Schmieder, who is a resident in Walnut Creek, was a very curious person and scientist and diver, and wanted to found this place that nobody knew about, that being Cordell Bank, and put together a group of divers to go explore. Very incredible, tremendous story of bravery and diving in this place. And they were the ones who kind of discovered it biologically and started to see what we have as pink hydrocorals and other orange cup corals on the bank part. So that was some of the early exploration. The sanctuary was designated, and eventually with different funding opportunities and technology increasing, Danny and other collaborators have worked together to find opportunities to get down and go further with these remotely operated vehicles. And so Danny can talk much more about the science part of that, but it has really been amazing to watch from my time of being at the sanctuary, where I was given like a slide carousel with some images taken with underwater cameras in the 70s. And now the imagery that we get from this technology is incredible to really show just the amazing amount of diversity that we have. And that's pretty exciting to share as an educator. So those deep sea corals that we've just started to learn about from recent expeditions it's almost like a whole new sanctuary to us in the last 2 years, being able to go as deep as we have. I've been a little bit like, wow, I almost have to start over. What if I have to kind of describe the sanctuary in a new way with these deep sea coral gardens and sponges and really interesting, unique features. But I'd love for Danny to fill in a little bit because she might remember some of the numbers of species that are new to us on our species list.
Well, the diversity is staggering, just staggering. And the film, of course, does a wonderful job of bringing that out. And Danny, what about these new corals? And also, maybe you could tell us, you have this insight into the ROVs, but what about these somewhat mentally unbalanced people that dive there now, some of which include my friends and your friends? Maybe you could tell us about that group as well and their role in providing information. And interestingly enough, only one of them is biologically trained. The others are just great divers.
Yeah, so let me start with the new species. So, discovery of new species, that's some of the most exciting work that we're doing right now. And it's just incredible that the sanctuary's been around for a long time, and we're still learning the basics of what animals live there. So that's really incredible. And, about the work that we do that is largely focused on management of the sanctuary, just these basic discoveries that add to our information about the ecology of the ecosystem is really fascinating and incredible. And one thing that I wanted to highlight about one of our recent species that was that we collected and was identified by Dr. Gary Williams of the California Academy of Sciences, one of our great collaborators on deep sea corals. This species is in a place where we've done lots of surveys, actually, and we just recently collected it and had it identified. And the reason that we missed it or overlooked it for so long is because as we start to have better access to deep areas in the ocean and to have better technology and high resolution cameras, we're starting to see things that we might have overlooked before. So the development of technology has really been instrumental in allowing us to access and better understand these places. We've also been discovering new species because we're just looking in places where no one else has ever looked before. So when the sanctuary was expanded, doubled in size in 2015, we started to explore some areas that were new areas of the sanctuary, and they're deep habitats. And when you start to look, the ocean is very structured by depth. So as you go to different depths, you see different communities of animals. So because we had never looked in these areas before, we didn't know any of the species that were there. So just by looking at a new place, we added a lot of species to our species inventory. I don't have the numbers at the top of my head, but we did, in addition to just observations of new organisms in our area, we have had a couple of new species described for science. And one of them was published recently, a new species of coral that was, a new species of sponge that was identified from one of our deep surveys and was identified by Dr. Henry Reiswig, who recently passed away. So we've lost one of our great sponge taxonomists who helped us better explore and understand the deep sea sponge communities there.
Well, I'm not surprised, and I would bet that as people continue the work there, that there will be more and more and more new species that nobody has ever seen, and each one is exciting in its own right. Deep water is an interesting place about which we know very, very little, as you both know only too well. I have a little note in front of me from Dave McGuire, who you probably all know as a shark fellow that was on our foundation board for a while, and he writes me and he says, Bob, will the increasing surface temperatures bring manta rays to the Cordell Bank? And I think the answer is no. And of course, they're primarily warm water species, and without discussing mantas, which I could do forevermore, they have come as far north as San Diego during the El Nino years. And you guys know all about El Nino years when we see weird stuff like turtles that shouldn't be here and billfish that come from Mexico and so on. So I don't think that's in the cards, which is fine because I could never get used to diving with all that weight on and so on. But at any rate, Alexa, May I direct this question to you, please? And this is a production question, really, and it asks you, what were some of the great challenges besides having to work with so many different people in so many different places? Were there challenges that were quite different for your group besides not being able to get in the water?
Yeah, I think that kind of in a way was the biggest challenge, right? In terms of getting the footage that we needed, because we knew there was this incredible place offshore, like Jennifer mentioned earlier, but it's really, really incredibly difficult to get there. So I think this must have been probably the first time ever we did an episode in 13 years where we never actually went to the place itself, right? The bank, like people visit the bank or the canyon that's part of the sanctuary. So, you know, that really, like, in the beginning was kind of figuring out, okay, how do we tell this story without having access to the place itself? And what worked out really well was the fact that there were so many different scientists, whether it was the sanctuary team or their colleagues through Access, and then different scientists with the Bodega Marine Laboratory, that were all looking at different components of what makes this ecosystem such a unique place. And, you know, through their work, I think we were able to talk a little bit more about the environment itself, and then having that wonderful footage that Jennifer had access to, and then also that the Bowie team, the team of technical divers that do dive out there, had access to. That helped tremendously. But that, I would say, that was the biggest challenge for this particular episode, because there was plenty of stuff to talk about. I mean, the storyline itself wasn't difficult. It was more of, okay, how do we make this not a radio story, but actually bring it live, you know, for television? So
yes,
thanks to all of your help, it came together. So,
well, that's great. It did come together, and there certainly is no shortage of stars, if you will.
You know, I want to chime in there and just give a shout out to the Bay Area underwater explorers, the Bowie divers that you're referring to, because this was a group of young people that came to the sanctuary, you know, about 5 or 6 years ago and said, you know, we really want to dive Cordell Bank, and we want to help support your work. And they were issued a permit in order to dive there. And for part of their work and their permit, they collected some data to help support research and monitoring, but also their footage, their video footage and their photos have been phenomenal for being able to interpret Cordell Bank and the beauty that is there because of their incredibly high quality photos and imagery that are a little hard for us to get. And
Sure.
so I really want to say thank you to them if any of them are tuned in, because some of them are in the film, which is wonderful, because they are volunteers that just were curious and wanted to help. And we really have benefited from that so much.
Yes.
They're very highly trained, skilled divers. And they really showed and told us about their training and how they work. And it's just an incredible group, Bay Area Underwater Explorers, that people should check out to learn more about.
Yes, they are amazing. And for people that dive, they would appreciate knowing about the technical bases of how these people work. It is not a place for the faint of heart or the new diver. And of course, as you know, a lot of this is done on mixed gases and so on and so forth. And it's really interesting, even to the non-diver, but to the diver, it's really intriguing. May I ask you also, Jenny, how can people, non-divers, non-professionals, can they be in this habitat? Is there a way to get the feel for the bank? I mean, of course you can't dive, but can they go out there and look around? What's the situation there?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it is a tough place to visually see. And anybody can go out there if you have a boat. And there really aren't any commercial charters that go to the Cordell Bank itself, not for wildlife watching, seabirds or whales. Some people will, some private bird groups, you know, might charter a private boat for a special tour to go out to see pelagic birds, because we have birds that come from all around the Pacific Ocean to the Cordell Bank region to feed, because there's so much food in the water here. But it's been tricky because we don't have anybody that is has a business that runs tours there regularly. And that's partially because one of the nicknames on the coast of Bodega is it's Blodega Bay, because the wind is such a strong part of our ecosystem, and a curse and a blessing for us, in the sense that makes it really hard to get out on a boat, but it also is a big part of the ecosystem with upwelling here and stimulating this food growth that we have. So it's kind of tough. So people that have their own boat or know people with boats can go out. One of my goals that I'm really trying to work on, and COVID is definitely slowing it down, is working with the National Marine Sanctuary Program and maybe the Bowie divers, if they're able to get underwater imagery for virtual reality so that people can experience Cordell Bank with the VR glasses that are goggles that people can get really immersed in an environment.
Yeah.
And this is one of my dreams to make happen, because Cordell, people are not going to be able to dive there. And I really want more people to experience the beauty there. So that's something that I'm trying to figure out with technology and diving, and hoping to work together with a lot of people to make that happen. So stay tuned.
Okay, that's great. And you're certainly right about the weather. I've been blown off the bank more times than I can count, although I have had spectacular days there in October, September, when the winds quiet down, and I've never been disappointed. Whales and seabirds and marine mammals of all types, cetaceans, and it's just amazing what's there. And when it quiets down so you don't throw up over the side and you can see, it's one of the most incredible places on earth. I tell people that if it was above water, we'd have to have a parking lot and valets, because it would be like the Grand Canyon, but it unfortunately or fortunately, it's below. Now, may I ask you this, please? What's your perception now from the work that you've done and others, your colleagues, about warming of the seawater and problems that we might have with changes in temperature and changes in pH, and which is, of course, a somewhat different issue. But can you comment on that in a few minutes that we have remaining?
Sure. Yeah, that's definitely something that we're concerned about. It's affecting the oceans globally, so everywhere is affected by this, and it's something that we're watching for and we're monitoring. So all of our work on access is collecting information about the physical characteristics of the water and the temperature and the salinity and the pH and the dissolved oxygen, the ocean chemistry. And another research project that was highlighted in the film was our work to monitor oxygen in the ocean, which is another thing that's affected by climate change. And we think that we're seeing effects of climate change in Cordell Bank National Marine Sanctuary in terms of temperatures and dissolved oxygen. We have not seen huge effects. We talk about this in the film of seeing huge die-offs or anything in the sanctuary, but we're probably seeing smaller changes, with more to come. And so this is a big concern for us. This is something that we're monitoring. We're stewards of the sanctuary, so we are charged with understanding how the sanctuary is changing in response to these stressors. And climate change is such a big pressure that it's not something that the sanctuary itself can really put up a wall and manage inside the sanctuary. But our part of our approach to that is we try and protect the place and reduce other stressors as we can. So there's a lot of protections in place in the sanctuary against discharging pollution into the sanctuary or disturbing the seafloor. And then there's protections that are in place from other agencies, not the sanctuaries, but the National Marine Fisheries Service, another part of NOAA, has regulations in place to protect large parts of the sanctuary from disturbance from fishing and restrictions on where you can fish. And so that is a protection of the seafloor habitat and the organisms in the sanctuary. So we try and keep the ecosystem intact as much as we can and protect the integrity of the ecosystem, because climate change is definitely a huge pressure on the oceans right now.
Yes, not only here, but worldwide. And it brings us to a series of decisions that have to be made, I think, in the very near future about just what you guys are doing. How are we going to do it, and how does it work? And we're so naive. And so the work that you're providing for all the people that work on these things and for the public in general is invaluable. It's just invaluable. It's like somebody had said that's quite a bit brighter than I am, that we know less about the ocean than we do about outer space. and it's a worthy statement, I think. Now we're right at the end of our formal time, and so if any of you have things that you would like to add, it'd be great. I haven't been able to ask everything that I would like to ask, but we might be able to continue on. We'll also look at there's questions that come from the audience that are watching us, and if you'd like to add something momentarily, that's great. I have questions that I can ask from the people that are listening, and I'd like to include those if that's possible. So from any of you wizards, is there more information, or should we just go to the questions and maybe we can do that, and then you can respond to that if that's appropriate. And this is really a question to whoever wants to deal with it. I wonder if I can ask the question about the seafloor structure. I realize that you're not geologists, but you may know, well, I'm sure you know something about columnar basalt and a rock formation that we see in Devil's Postpile, for example, in the high Sierras. And it's thought of as being, of course, the seafloor basis from trenches and hotspots in the world's oceans and so on. Are we looking at basalt at the base? Do we know that, or can you tell us something about the origin of this big block that we call Cordell Bank?
I can take that one.
Okay.
So Cordell Bank is, first of all, the difference between a bank and a seamount. A seamount is an ancient volcano that comes up from the seafloor and has grown from the seafloor and is no longer active, or might be active internally. And a bank is on the shelf and is of continental origin, meaning it was attached to land at some time in our geologic history. And so we have a lot of different types of bank habitats up and down the coast. And Cordell Bank's origins actually are part of the coastline. They were part of the southern Sierra Nevada mountains, I think 15,000 years ago. And it might be longer. My geologic time is not as up to date, but we have something on our website about the actual time. But that's granite. That's granite. So the Sierra Nevada mountains are granite. And then as time happened and the San Andreas Fault formed, this big chunk of granite tore off called the Selenian Block that started inching north along the San Andreas Fault on the Pacific Plate, and eventually spread a little bit. And so some of that granite is the most coastal form of that granite is south in Pinnacles National Monument. The Farallon Islands are part of the Selenian Block, Cordell Bank, Rittenberg Bank, and even some parts of the Farallon Peninsula are part of that Selenian Block of granite. So that's what the bank habitat is made up of. The other thing that's happened over time is that if you look on a map of Cordell Bank, you'll see this canyon to the north of the bank, and that's the Bodega Canyon, and that was just recently brought into the sanctuary when we expanded in 2015. And I have some questions about the origins of that. We've worked with Guy Cochran, who is with USGS, and he helps us with our data to help target where we might have the best substrate to survey with the remotely operated vehicle surveys that we do. And there's some thoughts that Bodega Canyon could be an offshoot maybe of historic San Francisco Bay, based on the fact that all of that was south at some point and has moved north a little bit. So there's still a little bit of unknown, because if you look on the map, Bodega Canyon kind of looks like this little worm on a map. It's like out of nowhere, unlike the Monterey Canyon that starts from shore and goes out. So it's kind of interesting to think about those origins. And then when we were down in Bodega Canyon, seeing these cool rocky structures, I think we have a lot more questions about that rock that's down there. But for the most part, Cordell Bank is granitic in its origins.
Very well. The coast of California is really a mixmaster full of geological history and all over the place with different rock formations. It's interesting, and if I had another life to live, I might do geology. It's really pretty intriguing. I think one of the questions that the public is interested in and this can go to everybody really, but the question is they would like to find out more about the work that is being done at the bank, publication-wise, television, whatever is available. So if you guys could comment on that, that would really be helpful.
Well, the first place to start is our website, and that's cordellbank.noaa.gov. And we have most of everything that we have done there. Also the West Coast National Marine Sanctuaries. We have 3 contiguous National Marine Sanctuaries, so Greater Farallones, Monterey Bay, and Cordell Bank. And then south is the Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary. Working together with the West Coast sites, we have a portal called Sanctuary Simon, that sanctuarysimon.org, that is coordinated by Monterey Bay staff, but they bring together a lot of synopses of science that are happening throughout West Coast National Marine Sanctuaries. And there's a photo database there and a species database to learn more about species throughout these regions. And it's a wonderful resource for science and education. So that's another great place to look. Yeah, so that's a great place to start.
Yeah, and there are also scientific publications produced by the people that you work with that I guess Cordell Bank or the Cordell Bank Marine Sanctuary would be places to start if they wanted to Google search for some of the scientific publications that have been produced. Is that a reasonable estimate?
Yeah, so Danny has helped bring those all together. We have a link on our webpage under science that has all the publications that have been done by collaborators, have been done by us, featuring anything that we've done in Cordell Bank National Marine Sanctuary. And it's quite a long list. So it has reports from different cruises and surveys, but also dissertations and theses. And for scientists that want to learn more about what has been done and interested, definitely be in touch with Danny to collaborate with us.
Okay, that's very useful. And Danny, may I ask you, where do we go from here? What are the pressing questions that you and your colleagues, research-wise, scientifically, and so on, would like to ask, assuming money was not a limiting factor?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. And before our panel discussion today this week, I rewatched the film, and it made me a little bit nostalgic for the field work that we do, because we have not been out all this year. Everything we were supposed to do this year has been canceled, just like everybody has been so disrupted because of COVID. So, we are not doing a lot of the work right now that we would like to be doing. So we're really hoping that next year we're going to be back out in the field monitoring conditions in the sanctuary. Long-term monitoring is one of our goals. It's the most useful type of information for our management and conservation. So we're hoping to get out and continue some of these projects that we have been working on. And another big goal is to be back out there looking at the bottom of the ocean again, looking at the seafloor, what we call the benthic habitat. And we have some surveys lined up for next year. So we still have a lot to learn about that habitat. Like you mentioned, we know less about the ocean than we do about the surface of the moon. So we still have a lot to explore there. So if money were no object, we'd be out doing lots of those surveys. Those surveys are quite expensive to get the whole ship out there and all the crew and all the equipment that we need. So we're only able to do those every once in a while. So being out collecting more information about the sanctuary would be our goal.
That's great. And that's a worthy goal, particularly in this time of environmental challenge and change. So I think that one of the things that the viewers can take away from our discussion is the uniqueness of this habitat, of this whole sanctuary effort. And you referred to 3 different sanctuaries in Northern California, Central California, in Monterey, and then the Farallones, and then ours, if you will, yours. And they're contiguous, is that correct? So that their boundaries touch. So we have, is it reasonable to say 300 miles of California coastline that is part of the sanctuary system without looking at Channel Islands?
I think so. I don't know the exact mileage, but it's quite a bit. It's all the way from Point Arena down to San Simeon is the contiguous coverage. Then you've got the Channel Islands. So I don't know what the mileage is there, but that's quite a bit.
Well, I would bet it's it's on that order, 300, somewhere in there. Well, I think that we've pretty much exhausted some of the major questions that we have before us. But I think that if there's something that you would like to add about the environment or any aspect of the sanctuary system, we have a couple of minutes to do that. And I think that's valuable to hear a little bit about the sanctuary, the role of the sanctuary as a composite, if you will. There are 15 different ones, and I realize that you're only involved in one, but you certainly are knowledgeable about all the efforts that are going on internationally. Take your choice. Jen, go ahead. You're the educational.
Yeah. Well, the thing that really comes to mind for me when I think about the value of sanctuaries for people is that it's national marine sanctuaries that are keeping oil and gas exploration away from our coast. What's one of our major regulations. And so you can enjoy the beaches and the waters here without the threat of oil washing up on your shoreline. And that is because of our national marine sanctuaries and the regulations we have. And that is a huge bonus for Californians and anybody that visits our shores. The other thing that I think is really outstanding is that our regulation about seabed disturbance, there's no seabed disturbance, is huge, where there's deep sea mining happening around the world and destroying habitat before we even know what's there. And that's not going to happen in our areas along the coast here. And they're small compared to the size of the ocean, but it's a start. And I think it's something we should be proud of, that we have the foresight to help protect these special places for the future and for everybody.
Well, you're absolutely right. They are national treasures, as Alexis has chosen to use in her introductory remarks for the film, and also the name of the film. And I think most people may not be aware of the fact that there are 4 major highly productive current systems in the world, and that they are linked to coastlines for the most part. And one of them happens to be along the California coastline. It's not that the entire ocean is a perfect habitat for everybody. And so we happen to live in that place. I tell students that you don't realize where you live. You don't realize what this is all about. And you have to go to the ocean, whether you get in it or not remains to be seen. But this is a very unusual place, and we're really, really fortunate to live here and to be able to work with it. We have the greatest jobs in the world, the 4 of us. Nobody has more fun than we have collectively, and better colleagues. So, ladies, this has been a real pleasure for me to be able to interact with you. I know you, and I've gotten to know you a little bit better through our work here. I hope to see you sooner than later in real, so we can chat face to face. I'm really tired of this virus, and I want it to go away. And the sooner it goes away, the sooner that we can get together and talk about the things we love. But you guys are champs, all 3 of you, just champs, and you are people of worth and goodwill that make a difference on this planet. And I'm really proud to be associated with you. It's been my pleasure. And to our viewers, for those of you I haven't had the pleasure of meeting, which is probably all of you, it's really been a pleasure of having you here. So I think we'll go now because we're out of time, but it's sure been fun, and it's sure been informative. So thank you all very, very much.
Thank you. So nice to see you.
It's nice to see you all.
And a big thanks to Anna and Shannon and the entire film festival team who've been working so hard behind the scenes.
Yes, absolutely. They are invaluable as well, but unseen, unfortunately. Okay, well, I think